Since we're live now, we should be able to start. I think.
To
Are we
begin
live?
at the beginning.
To begin at the beginning and the end at the end, and then to stay on point is almost like an impossible
That
action.
was very
So
poetic. I really
yeah,
enjoyed what you just did with that. I
uh,
mean, I should have yes-anded it, but
yeah.
instead I just wanted to like highlight, hey everybody, welcome to a podcast.
Aha! Hey, absolutely. One of the best way to start a podcast. We've never nailed it, and it's been how much? We're like 109
Ah,
episodes in now.
I feel like that's just our
That
pattern.
is it.
So
So you,
it's not about nailing it; it's about
it's
doing
it's
that
it's
well.
how bad how badly can we make it into a transition, into an introduction.
Sure.
I do want to say first and foremost, obviously, thank you for everybody for hanging out with us. Good morning on this beautiful Friday. It is the 24th.
24th.
Yes, I had to look. I don't know why.
That's
It's
okay.
Friday. I'm waking up. Let's say that Friday morning, the 24th of March, 2023, episode 109. We're literally one episode away from being 110. So we're gonna basically start going
Hmm.
into legit numbers. We have Dan with us. We have Greg. Steve is with us as well. I see Simon says Hypno, and I say Barry Johnson's in there as well. And Oliver Rockwell's in there,
Al Sabakli.
and of course Jermaine, the man himself, joining us, of course, on this beautiful day, talking a little bit about some tech, some nice little conversations, a couple of
It
announcement
seems to be
launches,
the thing
actually.
that we do,
Yeah, a
just talk
little.
about some tech and stuff.
We
So
try.
that's cool.
When I'm not talking about scooters and e-bikes, that's literally all I talk about is
But that's
tech.
that's tech too. So
Actually, that's
I
true.
kind of feel like for both of our channels, we're kind of getting into how am I diversifying my
I know.
technology conversations?
And it's the weird part about it is it's like that dual path where we ever like we talk and we're doing things like that. We always kind of like somewhat are trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. And it seems like for me, at least right now, the Xiaomi Scooter Ultra, 4 Ultra, that's like been doing really good for me. Like I don't know if it's because I'm
Yeah,
like one of the very few people that have it. Obviously, it's not available yet for sale. I think if I'm not mistaken, but
it's also a
um,
badass scooter, so it could
it
just be
is
that.
really nice. It is a really nice.
You
It
see what
is.
he just did there? It's like,
It is a
oh,
real.
it's so choice.
Yes, yes. It's that if I'm walking out the door and I want to go get my mail about 3 miles away, that's what I'm taking. I'm taking the scooter, the four, the ultra. That's the one. And I don't
It's
know
pretty
why I went
hot.
with that accent. Yeah, it is. And then it's seriously one of the very few pieces of tech that I enjoy outdoors a lot more than obviously smartphones are great and everything, but like that piece of tech, just transportation, the fun time
Hmm.
and all the support that it has, for me, it just makes me comfortable coming out, leaving and coming back and not feeling like I just went through every single bump on the road.
For
So that to
sure.
me is a
Well,
big thing.
and I think that just goes hand in hand with how refreshing the experience has become riding some e-bikes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I want to get into
It's just
e-bike. I
kind of
want to get into some of that like
yeah.
I
Well,
mean
you
with
should. I mean, it's kind of right up your alley, and it's just another part of that experience where you know. I don't know. We're using technology to augment something that's already a very viable method of transportation, and
yeah.
the two just go together so well
Oh no, no,
that
absolutely. And ever since we got a chance when I had an opportunity to go over and test out the X3, the camera that I was reviewing
yeah.
from Insta360, I've been very intrigued in how e-bikes and how they perform, because the reality is, to me, till you ride one, it's hard to explain how that, especially when you're in the one that it features throttle, not just pedal assist or something like that.
Hmm.
And then where your brain keeps pedaling and you're like, well, wait a minute, I don't need to pedal anymore. This is on throttle. Like, and then you stop
Hmm.
and then your brain's like, this doesn't feel right. This is not right.
Yeah.
Like the bike should not be moving anymore. Like, you know what I mean? It's weird. Like it's
It's
like a
kind
very
of a
old
head trip.
mentality for me. Yeah. Once you get
But
used
at
to
the
it
same
though, it's
time,
nice.
you also get a feel for like, hey, I'm not really hitting the throttle trigger, but I'm not really contributing to the locomotion of this bike because I'm pedaling, but the motor is taken. It's there's so many little bits of this that are such a fun twist on something that we're all. I mean, if you ever learned how to ride a bike, I shouldn't say we're all familiar with.
Yeah, that's true.
But again, it's just been really fun. So
Yeah.
this episode is not about scooters and
No, 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 no. We're
e-bikes.
gonna we're gonna try to stick on the schedule. We have somewhat of a hard cutoff time
Yeah,
for ourselves a little bit
I
this
gotta
morning.
go in 90 minutes, and our show is always supposed to be 90 minutes, and we've very rarely
Since
stuck
day
the
one.
landing at 90.
109
So
episode 108 episodes ago, we strive to hit 90, and I don't think we ever actually have, but we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it today. Today is gonna be the day. I need
Today's
everybody
the
to
day.
help us. Please keep us legit if you don't mind. We have a lot of good things we want to talk about today. Everybody's gonna start
These are
spamming
all
us.
of our enablers. They're
I
like,
know
hey,
they're
GK,
all
let me ask you a random question. Hey, Juan, what do you think about things that make you angry? And then I go off on a
exactly.
20-minute rant. So
I'm not
I
gonna
don't
ask
think
for
they're
the
gonna
over
help.
under on
I
how
think
we're
they're
gonna hit.
gonna.
Yeah, they're gonna make it worse. So we have a lot of good things to talk about today. We're gonna talk about obviously the Find X6 Pro, brand new launch on Monday. Well, Monday night technically ish, middle of the night Tuesday.
Yeah.
And then of course, so we're going to talk about the video. Juan dropped the 1 inch sensor, the conversation around the 1 inch sensor.
Mhm.
I kind of combined those two titles together. I know that was
Yeah,
one
I
of
mean,
kind of
let's jump
Juan's
right
stop
into
bet.
that Oppo because that
Yeah,
looks
yeah.
like a
How
pretty
do we not
crazy.
jump into
That looks
that
like a
Oppo?
sexy mamma jamma you got right there.
Freaking sexy. I'm sorry, I can't say these words. Very nice. It is very nice. It
Our
is
show's
Ramadan.
not
I do want to say
monetized.
happy. No, no, I do want to say happy Ramadan to anybody. I'm not supposed to cuss. I'm not supposed to. I need to be very
Oh,
mindful
for you,
during
for
this
you, for
month.
you. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
like, I
I
don't care
am.
about YouTube.
No,
Whatever.
no, 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 no. This is. I'll get demonetized. Somebody will knock on my door. It's like, let me have your Muslim card back. No, no. The Okay, so I'll a little bit of background on that on this device. During MWC, Oppo had an opportunity for us to go do some photography shoot. They called it a photography tour. That was just literally a couple of days after MWC, and we had the opportunity to test out this device in Malaga, in Spain, in a beautiful
Mhm.
weather, in beautiful scenery. Like everything was hitting on point. And the weird thing about it is, a week before, the projected weather was supposed to be rain and gloom and just the worst thing ever. Like it was going to be like the way we're having it here for the last 5 or 6 days. It's just gloomy, cloudy. So had the opportunity to play with it then, used it for that duration, enjoyed it quite a bit. Um, it was first, I was very surprised to see that Oppo decided to go that route because they've typically gone more the 50, the triple 50, and I mean essentially it is a 50
Mhm.
megapixel camera, but they haven't really stepped up to the 989. They've always been kind of like to the the 809, or basically sticking around the 8 series but never hitting it.
Well, and Oppo often I think goes for some of the more extreme experiments,
I
like
was
putting
about
a
to say is they
microscope
experiment
into a phone
exactly
or something like that.
like the
So,
Find
but
X3
but this
Pro
is
and
this
all of
is the
that. Yeah.
nice kismet where the grand experiment is actually stepping up to a 1 inch camera sensor. So this is the right time for Oppo to go, hey, there's a crazy experiment that we could do on our phones right now.
Yep.
And it seems like that's how they kind of landed that with the Find X this year.
So first, that was the big surprise for me when we were sitting down. They gave us a little bit of a briefing, and we are like looking over, like, oh my god, they went with the 99. I'm like, because this is literally like a few days short after, obviously, Xiaomi announcing their 13 Pro, which also
Hmm.
features the 99. Which is not that long after, we had the X90 Pro and the X90 Pro Plus also featuring the 99. Like, you're getting the conversation, which leads up into Juan's conversation. So I was super
Yeah.
excited. And they gave us kind of a heads up, like, look, that software's early. We're trying to figure out what to do and all that stuff. But should be a good representation what this device is. And oh boy, was that device. That device. I mean, and I say that device because the unit that I have is not the same one. They took those back and they sent us a retail
Sure.
unit afterwards because we didn't have boxes or anything. Actually, our device was hidden inside of one of those fake enclosures that make it look weird, like we all
Yeah, it's like
walked
when you're,
around
you're
with, like,
driving around a car and you see
yeah,
like, oh
yeah,
wait, it's that mule thing where
yeah,
they
yeah,
put
yeah.
all the
Like they're
extra
totally not
body
holding a
padding
pre-release
and
device
cladding and
from this
stuff.
private company. Yeah, these guys are totally legit. So we all looked like that. And then fast forward to a few weeks later, we get the retail units. We start out, actually be able to use it here in the US, test it out. Um, I'll say that I've always been a fan of Oppo's color science and technology and the way they
Hmm.
do their image processing. This is not just for the 6 Pro or even the 5. This is basically it's been all the way since the Find X2 Pro. Something in the way they process images and the way they process just their calibration of their colors prior even to going with Hasselblad has always been, I felt like, in the right balance of where you're not getting that overly saturated, just too
Hmm.
much colors, and not just sitting there basically being, I mean, obviously you wanted a little bit more. There's some processing. This is not giving us exactly how the picture looks like. This is more, a little bit more vibrance, tuning a little bit done there. So for me, the approach there was really nice. They leverage a 3 camera system, and they don't want to call them a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary camera. They're literally 3 independent cameras that are composing the experience on the back. The main sensor is fantastic. The telephoto sensor is even more, in my opinion, like that bokeh experience. Like there's a couple of ways to get like that nice natural bokeh from the sensors. The
Sure.
first one obviously does a very good job and a very nice, very shallow depth of field.
Yeah.
But if you want to be able to play a little bit more with that telephoto lens and you want to be able to, when you're a
Well,
little
and
bit
the
further away,
telephoto is a 3 times zoom.
three times
It's
zoom, exactly. Yeah. It's a three times
okay.
optical, six times hybrid. So I
Nah, nah.
yeah, forget about this. It's basically, I'll say this. The main sensor is a 1 to 2 time lossless. So 1 time, 2 time lossless if you want to be able to jump between the two.
Sure.
The third, the tertiary, the 3x1 is primarily what I've been enjoying for portrait imagery. Especially when I'm trying to take shots from
Hmm.
people that are not right next to me, because with the 1 inch sensor, you have to actually be
Well,
you're the
and
actual zoom, right?
the
To be able to
the 3 times zoom should roughly be giving you around a 75 to
it's like
80 or
I think it's like
68 to 75.
I want to say it's about a 70 millimeter equivalent. I don't
About
have
a
the
70,
specific.
somewhere
Yeah,
in
yeah,
there.
yeah. No, no. I mean,
Being 5 millimeters off isn't going to be a
yeah,
tremendous difference in your field of view. So somewhere around a 70 millimeter, and that's not bad for
no,
portraiture, especially for like a head and shoulder shot. So
absolutely. And I think that's literally what I focused with that sensor. For the most part, when I was taking a lot of, like, I took a lot of portraits of some of the other creators that were with us, and the images, like seriously, like when you get the composition with the light hitting and the shadows and the objects behind them set up right,
hmm
the images came out fantastic. And I shared those with
yeah.
them, and they
Now,
enjoyed it.
TK, do you want to tell people why that sensor is so good at giving you nice shallow depth of field for telephoto portrait shots without using just a fake portrait mode blur?
Well, it's the one of the biggest thing that you can use a telephoto lens is to do that to actual it's the
But
composition of the
but do you want to
sorry.
tell them why? I'm sorry, I'm the sensor science nerd.
No, 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 no.
So
Well, okay, let's do this. Let's jump into the conversation. You dropped a video because the telephoto lens is not the 1 inch sensor. It's the actual it's
no,
just
the
yeah.
telephoto lens on the Oppo. I don't have the phone. I,
No,
I
no, I
was I
understand.
was setting you up. This was
No, yeah.
T-ball.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
the the telephoto on the Oppo Find X6
Pro
Pro
is
is
the
the
IMX,
largest sensor we've ever seen used on a telephoto camera on a
and
phone.
there's two
It's
of them.
it's the it's the 1/1.56 inch type sensor. And previously, the best phones that I've used for telephoto have used half-inch
Yeah.
sensors. So now this is a sensor that is normally the main
Mm.
camera sensor on other extremely expensive phones. Like the sensor on the telephoto on this Oppo is bigger than the main camera sensor on an iPhone 14 non-Pro. And that's
Yeah.
why. So this is the grand conversation that we immediately run into whenever we're comparing Pro and Ultra phones.
Yeah.
You can look at a Note 23 or like last year's Vivo X80 Pro,
Hmm.
and the telephoto performance sounds more impressive on those phones. You have like 10 times zoom, moon space zoom, and that's really, really long. But phones like the Pixel 6 Pro, the Pixel 7 Pro, and the Xiaomi 12S Ultra
Yeah.
don't have as long a reach, but they use larger sensors. And so in that shorter reach, you get much better image quality, you get a shallower depth of field that separates your subject from the background, and you get significantly better low light performance. And so this becomes insanely more useful when you're indoors and you're in dimly lit situations. The science of that sensor is formidable in much more practical areas than whether or not you can take a picture of outer space with that kind of reach. So if
Yeah.
you think about it, like whenever you're indoors and you have an iPhone and you try to take like a zoomed photo of someone, like, hey, someone across the living room, something cute's happening, you zoom in to take a picture of two people interacting, the photo's gonna look like garbage. And most of the time, it's just cropping off of the main sensor. You won't
Yeah.
even use the telephoto because it's a dinky, teeny tiny little sensor. Using the main camera sensor of other phones as your telephoto soaks up substantially more light, gives you much better image clarity, lower noise,
Oh yeah.
so your image isn't as grainy, and then you have noise reduction filters smearing all that detail, and
Yeah.
you get a much more practical use out of that sensor. Increasingly, I kind of like telephotos that are in the sort of 3 to 5 times zoom, but using much bigger sensors. That
The,
really kicked off with the Pixel 6 Pro. I was
yep.
really impressed with it on the Xiaomi 12S Ultra. And now Oppo is the first company to really take us into a next step on an even bigger telephoto sensor.
And what gets me though is that they didn't just keep it at the telephoto. They took the same sensor to their ultra wide.
Yeah,
It's literally three main cameras on one phone. And that's why they're like, we don't have a main camera in the back. We have a camera system. And I'm like,
yeah,
okay, I see where you're doing. This is, I mean, to me, I feel like this is another I'll say this. I want them to continue this path, but I've said this thing every year, every time we see a new phone from them. It sounds like it's
hmm
a combination. And the other kind of kicker also is the fact that this device right now, at least in the current version, is not coming internationally. It's a China only device, which is kind of like what
yeah,
we've seen with other carriers. I mean other
yeah.
manufacturers before. You know, yeah, like exactly. Vivo did the exact same thing with the what's it called, the Vivo X90 Pro Plus. It's
Pro
the
Plus.
Snapdragon, the higher end model, the one that has the better
hmm
camera, the main, the obviously the 989 and the ultra wide, but we don't get that internationally. And then what
For
we
sure.
got with the X90 Pro was a focus on the 989, which is great, but we didn't get that same experience all across. I
And
feel
and I
like,
believe this is the camera sensor that OnePlus used on the OnePlus 9 Pro. And the OnePlus 9 Pro has had the best ultra wide camera
it's still, I feel like the
we've
9
ever seen.
Pro, since the 9 Pro combination where we found the best ultra wide, and then they went to the 10 Pro, which he changed the sensor, and then now with the
hmm
11 also kind of changing the experience again. I feel like OnePlus is still trying to figure out how to get that combination back. But
No,
the 9 Pro I feel
OnePlus
like
is
has
trying to
still,
cost cut. Oppo is just saying
oh,
this is the best of everything we have, and it's going to
yeah,
be a pricey phone.
but this is the year where OnePlus and Oppo have such a stark difference, though.
Yeah,
Historically, we've seen them closer in relation to each other. This is the year where they're like, no, no, no. There's definitely a big gap between the two. You
yeah.
have Oppo very premium, and then you got OnePlus that's trying to go a little bit more budget friendly. And I don't say this. The 11 is still a very good contender. I'm not trying to make it sound like it's not a good phone.
But they're now
They're very different.
significantly
Yeah,
different products for different consumers,
very
and
much
the
a focus
we
into,
lost.
yeah.
I feel we lost real OnePlus Pro with the OnePlus 9 Pro. The
It's
OnePlus
been
10
a
Pro was still a good premium tier phone. I think it did great battle against Galaxy S22s,
mhm.
not Galaxy Note 22s, but the Galaxy S22s. And
Yeah, yeah.
now OnePlus has kind of shifted that back into, hey, we just want to be sort of upper premium, mid range to lower entry level premium expensive, like whatever that fog window is between $600 and $700.
We went through years of small incremental upgrades, small incremental price increase to a shift in kind of like a shift in reverse, kind of a little bit to a readjustment year. So I think that's last year and this year. Last year was more of a sustaining. This year is
Sure.
more of an adjustment. I'm hoping that it changes the tone in the future, but at least for where we are right now, I think the OnePlus 11 is still a very good contender for the U.S. market for what it
hmm
offers from a speed, performance, from updates, from just general overall functionality. I feel like the 11 is a very good
So
phone.
I've got a yeah, OnePlus. We know the
We
OnePlus
we
11.
know the we
We're
know
talking
OP.
about the Oppo, and
Yeah, the
I gotta
OPPO,
know.
the other OP.
I have to believe with
Yeah,
this kind of sensor tech on all three rear sensors that Oppo is delivering the closest matched performance, video quality, resolution, frame rate, that we don't have to play that horribly obnoxious game of my main sensor can shoot 4K 60, but then my ultra wide can only shoot 1080p, and my telephoto can shoot 4K 30, and you have to memorize what sensor can
which
shoot
one
what
does what?
video
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
quality and resolution, and that's the worst.
The biggest thing they tried to do here is to leverage the, not only to try to color calibrate all three lenses to be the same, or the sensors, but
Sure.
they kept the same features. We still don't have 8K. This is something that one Oppo does not do. 8K is
Yeah, I
not
don't
here,
care as much about
which I
that.
don't
But are
really.
they all
Yeah, for me,
matched 4K 60 with pro
4K
modes and stuff?
for me in Pro mode, and but no 4K 120. That's the problem. No high speed
Oh,
radar.
yeah, no.
Uh,
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that just because I bet you this is my, sort of out there prognosticator guess. I bet you Sony is holding on to that for themselves. I
Well, I
bet
mean,
you the first time
OnePlus,
we see a
OnePlus can't even say
989.
that can't even make that statement anymore. But yeah,
No, no,
no, no,
no. But
exactly.
I
Oh,
bet you
for
the
when the
first time we see
199.
a 989 that can shoot 4K 120, it'll go to a Sony
So
Exmor.
Sony will be like, let me show you how it's done. No, I know. Yeah, I know.
Exactly.
Believe it or not, I think, yeah, for the most part, I feel like Sony does. Well, I mean, like they make so many. Okay, they make literally 99 or 95% of all the sensors on all the phones we see in the world.
Yeah.
But I feel like the focus that they've always had, and in the mantra that they've had for Xperia devices, is that they're trying to give you that clean output, that better performance, that high readout, performing bigger pixel, 12 megapixel camera, sensors that we've been seeing before, and
Yeah.
it's worked for them. This is the thing; like they know what works for them, and they're sticking to it.
Hmm.
I feel like the Pro, if we do see, because we're kind of overdue for a Pro series, if we need to think about it. The Pro I
Yeah.
came out early last year.
Well, I would adore, like, I've maybe sent this to Sony PR, like, whenever you guys do decide to put your own best camera sensor in
Yeah, yeah.
your own phone, we've had the Pro, we've had the Pro I,
I.
and so I think we need the Pro II.
Oh,
So
I
it's
was
the
gonna say the
imaging
Pro I
side.
with the no Pro I with the two, with like with the 1 inch sensor on it, like the quotation next to it, just say like right on point. It's like this is the Pro I
But
1 inch. Yeah,
it's the Pro 2, but the Pro was really more video production and streaming. The Pro I was their imaging Pro, but now
that's
make it the
true.
Pro II, and it's the Pro 2, but it's not the Pro 2, it's the Pro I. So anyway,
No, no, I absolutely, I'm
already
with you.
YouTuber brains are melting. How do you even say Suspiria XIV 42? It's so hard. But here's my Sony A7S III.
Yeah,
Like.
yeah, no, no, I know, which is actually what we're talking. I'm back on the S3, by the way. I'm not using the links, the Insta360 link anymore. Had a little bit of a hiccup with it last time when I was trying to do the Adam Dow. I was on Adam Dow's podcast, and it just
Hmm.
stopped. It stopped like in the middle of the thing. I'm like, yeah, not
Ew,
doing that.
that's
But
not
either
good.
way, it somehow it had and I didn't know how to troubleshoot it at the time. But going back to the Find X6 Pro, the one thing that I will probably say that kind of got me a little bit, and I voiced this opinion at the time when we were with them. The front-facing camera, although we have a 30, a high megapixel camera sensor,
Sure.
still kept at 1080p, still kept at a slightly more over processed with beauty and all of that. And I understand. I think that's for the market that it's in. I think maybe that works. But I always feel like, look, the reality is with regardless what's going on with TikTok right now, but like with TikTok, with Instagram, with Reels, with Shorts, with whatever front-facing camera experience, cameras need to actually get upgraded to give us
Hmm.
those, like, don't get me wrong. One of the things I appreciate on a Samsung, on an S23 Ultra or an S22 Ultra and whatever, is the fact that it shoots 4K 60 on the front facing sensor. The fact
Sure.
that the Pixel can shoot a 4K 60 on the front facing sensor. Again, we have so many of the main
I
contenders in the
don't
international
want
market.
consumers to ever have to think about what camera supports what features, what
Exactly.
quality. You are
Yeah.
now no longer focused on your content creation. You're thinking about manipulating settings on a computer. And that is, I cannot overstate how that distraction is disruptive to
Yeah.
the content creation situation.
Or if
It
you forget
it
and you
is
shoot
a
your content and it's not in the same resolution and you're like, crap, okay, I got to go reshoot that
I
part. Yeah.
mean,
No, no.
that's what kind of hit me on the Xiaomi 13. And the Xiaomi 13 does this thing where it resets every
The
time you
setting.
open the camera app. And so then I'd have to go back in and, like, okay, no, I really meant 4K 60. I told you to make settings persistent and it still didn't. And then I would switch camera sensors and it would mess with video quality, resolution, and frame
Because
rate.
not all, yeah,
And
because
this
not all the
is
sensors can exactly. No, no, it's
this
the
is the opposite of it just works.
what
Oh.
what gets me though is like, okay, so Sony even got on the bandwagon, and they did, at least with the 4 series, we finally have 4K in the front. The camera sensor can shoot
Hmm.
higher. I mean, we know, you're touting the size of the sensor as if that's part of it, but it's also the fact that it's a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit too also when we jump into the Redmi series. Redmi also just put in a 200 megapixel camera sensor on the Redmi 12
Ooh.
Pro Plus. Again, it's the same experience that we saw when they brought it over to the 12T Pro last year. It's
Hmm.
definitely, it, there's a limitation of what your sensor can do when your software doesn't support what the sensor can do. And I feel like at this point, with the fact that, realistically, what they're telling us is that you need to live with the cameras on the back. and this is literally how it is. And I think with the Find X6 Pro, I only want to work with the sensors in the back. I only want to
Yeah.
record my video with it. I only want to take my stills with it. I want to edit on this device. I want to process. We actually have a functional setup option to be able to control full performance mode and balance mode when you want it. Kick it into overdrive and go back into balance mode when you don't want to waste battery life. Charging speed is really fast. Performance, the display is gorgeous. It's. I'll say this: the phone is actually heavier. It is a heavy
Yeah.
boy. And it's actually not a thin device. Like if you think about it, it's actually pretty
No.
thick considering. Like it feels almost like a little bit thicker than the S23 Ultra. And I was
Hmm.
like, but I understand why. Like
Yeah.
why you're doing it. And of course, I was lucky enough to be able to get the vegan leather. And I keep wanting to call it vegan leather, but everybody keeps correcting me like it's fake leather. Like it is fake leather, but it's just a nice way of saying fake leather. Just let me have it, please.
Yeah, I feel like I just need to start replying to people like, be more pedantic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh
You
no,
you
no,
could be,
yeah, yeah,
sure.
but it's just
No one likes you, but that's fine. Correct more.
it's that it's this color. It's just that the
Yeah, that's a real
design.
good looking phone.
This looks seriously like this was ripped out of a DSLR, like or like an old no, sorry, an old style Nikon
Like
or like an old
it
style
looks like a
leather and
fixed lens camera. It
exactly, yeah,
almost
yeah.
looks like kind of like a classic rangefinder with those
It
busted
actually
leather
looks, yeah,
cases on it.
the way they have it
Yeah.
on the leather one. They actually have a dial that looks like a dial, but it's not really. It's just kind of mimicking the Hasselblad
Yeah.
cameras with the orange dot. So to me, it was like, oh my god, this is crazy. And then the case actually has the same
Yes.
thing. Like,
See,
hold on,
that's
let me see.
critical. Because
Like,
that's what I
make
loved about the X70 and the
yeah,
X80, but the X90
I didn't get
only
that.
has a clear plastic bumper case, and
The
I miss the
X90
case
Pro
that fit the
Plus has
has
that.
the fancy case.
Yeah,
Yeah.
has so when I borrowed that at CES during a couple of days, I borrowed the X90 Pro Plus from our buddy Edabong, and yeah, man, the leather case there, like, oh my god, and the Chinese version of the X90 Pro has that custom case, but
Yeah.
the international model didn't get that, which I'm like, oh come on, like,
No.
how much more could it have cost
So
for you to
close.
make that
So
experience just
close.
over? I'll say this. I still absolutely love the X90 Pro. The X90 Pro is my B-roll camera on the go. I covered
Hmm.
MWC with that device. I did not regret a single minute not bringing my DSLR. I was so much lighter, so much
Yeah.
easier to walk around. The Xiaomi 13 Pro has such an amazing camera for photography. I've been using that quite a bit. So I was
Hmm.
talking to Juan before the show. I'm actually right now I'm running both well, essentially two main sensors, the Find X6 Pro and the Xiaomi 13 Pro. It's for me, it's such a spoiling experience, but I can't see myself using anything else. Like if I have access to the tool, I want to use it. There are
Yeah.
some limitation with the Chinese version. Obviously, there's a few things that are not there. Android Auto's not there. We don't have nearby share. Transferring content has been a little bit of a little bit more of a longer process because we don't have nearby share. And I'm so
Yeah.
used to nearby sharing all my content, but
And
uh,
Bluetoothing over is functional,
no,
but it's really slow.
yeah. So I've been leveraging heavily like Drive or I actually have one of those like mini USB-C thumb drives that I could basically just pop in,
Yeah.
transfer all my data, put it off.
Or
Um,
I've been keeping like SSDs in
no, no,
my
no. So
pockets.
when I was at MWC at the end, I was literally I'm using the SSD I got from Kando last year from Sony. It's a 500 gig. It's a tiny little tough. Yeah, exactly. Juan, he's like, let me show you my SSDs.
I'm starting
Uh,
to collect them like decks of cards. This
You should
has a
have them. No,
project
no, you
on
should
it.
have them on your keychain, dude. Like when you
This
walk out, like you put your keychain down, you're like three SSDs on the side with like two keys.
You just hear me clacking
Exactly.
every time I take a
That's
step.
Juan walking. That's how you know. It's when you hear the SSDs.
Crack,
Correct,
crack.
correct.
Well, they should
No,
be
no,
fine against like minimal vibration damage, right? It should be cool.
absolutely.
The
And
data's not
just
going
make
to
sure to
get
get the tough edition
wrecked.
from SanDisk. Um, but yeah, so waiting until Monday to be able to share my content in there, and I tried to put
Sure.
as many pictures and videos as I could in one video. Like this has been the most I have so much more to share. This is the weird part. I didn't even share any of the butterfly exhibit that we went to with the Find X
Hmm.
series because I didn't even have space for it. I put in a few pictures in there.
Yeah.
um, the video I'm trying to work on right now, while I was traveling, I had the S23 Ultra, I have the Pixel 6 Pro, 7 Pro. So I want to put together a video basically putting the Find X6 Pro against those two sensors. The images I shared while I was on the trip were from an S23 Ultra. They weren't from the device. We couldn't share content from the phone yet. They were worried about people being able to pick up on
Sure.
and all of that. Like not that anybody did not figure that there was some probably thing we were testing, whatever.
Yeah.
But at the time I was shooting, while I was at the when we were at the canyon and so on, I took pictures with the S23 Ultra. And when we went to the butterfly exhibit, I went and compared that directly to the Pixel 7 Pro. So I want to put that type of content in there, show the experience between the two. Since how often well, not yeah, how often I'll probably never have another opportunity to do something very similar to this, where I get to test a phone in a foreign country at an amazing scenery and multiple
Yeah.
locations where I just don't typically like, hey honey, I'll be gone for a week, I'm just going to do that real quick camera test that you wanted me. But I want to say thank you very much to Oppo for, of course, for not only covering my travel expenses to MWC, but also for the travel experience, and then sharing the device. I do that for full disclosure. That was basically
Yeah.
the trip itself was covered by Oppo, but none of the opinions given about this device were in any way, shape, or form
Yeah.
influenced by
We
Oppo.
we know you. It's fine.
I
know
just
FTC.
we get
It's what we gotta
FTC,
do.
but also getting comments of like people on the YouTube. They're like, hey, this trip, Oppo takes a whole bunch of influencers to Spain and and everything is positive about this one. Like, I told them, I was like, dude, let the pictures and the videos talk. Don't listen to me. Look at them.
Right.
It's not like I said this phone is great and I said, and thank you for watching the video. I'm like, look at what it could do.
I've taken to just muting that person because
Yeah.
seriously, we see massive YouTube channels getting to benefit from this type of focus and attention from manufacturers, and that's not a red flag. I feel the only reason they do that is because we have channels that are still small enough where we like digging into the comments, so they feel that they'll get an interaction
they'll
there.
get
And
interaction.
I'm not going to reward that behavior.
No.
It's mute and move on. If you got to the end of that video, because I watched your video, if you
I
got to
appreciate
the end of that video, looking at those photo samples, and you're like, but TK's biased because they treated him nice, and you didn't look at any of the
you
samples,
skipped the whole
can't
video. Like, to me, I was
acknowledge.
like, and then it just, to me, was like, it's hard for me to explain it, but I feel like this is the year I'm in love with camera sensors.
Yeah.
Like, it's the year I'm seriously, I honestly did not think there was going to be another phone that could top the X90 Pro Plus Pro for me. Obviously the Pro Plus either, but the X Pro Plus wasn't in my hand.
Oh, I'm struggling not to jump on. So I'm going to buy one more mega camera sensor phone. I'm only going to put money towards one more because I'm already tapped for way too many review devices. I cannot spend a ton of money on like what happened last year with me on the Xiaomi 12s Ultra. I feel bad because that was a significant expense to cover that phone.
Yeah,
and then I immediately just started using it, and I never really dug deep into reviewing it. That to me was like the best review I could point to, was like every single piece of B-roll at the end of last year that you saw was shot from the Xiaomi 12s Ultra. Not just like, hey, I took it outside and I took one quick little photo of this, like phone panning tracking shots, close-ups on e-bikes, scooter stuff, accessory builds. And I would say over half of my footage in the office is now quick setups shot from the 12s Ultra or the Vivo X90. So I never, like, I had this phone and you're like, hey, let me tell you about this phone. I never really got to that.
You were busy
place.
using it.
I just kept using it. And the same thing kind of happened to me here now with the Vivo also. And I feel bad because Vivo sent that phone and I've put out a video on it, but it's become the backbone of other conversations and other videos, and it's a part of my book now. So I'm going to spend money on one more.
Okay.
The Oppo is now top of my list because I love those companion sensors. I really want to see what those companion sensors can do, but I'm holding out until we get a little bit more news about a potential Xiaomi 13 Ultra. And
so that was
if I go from 12s Ultra to 13 Ultra, that might be what pulls me, but I'm waiting. I'm waiting until we know more about that phone.
Well, so that's the thing.
That's going to be the last one I spend money on.
The weird part about it is I feel like the 13 Pro is the international version of the 12s Ultra that you had from last year, but maybe packaged slightly different, because we haven't had a one-inch sensor from them. And
no,
I asked, no word from the Ultra. Yeah, yeah.
So there are rumors on a 13 Ultra. We've
Oh,
seen
oh, yeah.
case designs for another Xiaomi phone, and they might do an S series. So I might be waiting a while before I
Oh,
buy
that's right. The
another
S
buy
comes out
another
later.
buy a phone.
Yep.
But if you were really focused on the photography, the 13 Pro is a monster, and there
Hmm.
are some improvements to image processing. I think the lens is probably a little bit nicer, but the companion sensors are what get me. That's where I really feel the 12S Ultra is actually the better all-rounder performer over the 13 Pro
Hmm.
if we're just looking at photography. Now, obviously, that's a hyper focus. You're going to look at, SoCs and storage options. There are tweaks to the display quality. I mean, all of the other things that make a phone are improved and you step up.
Yeah, of
But
course. Well, it's a
considering like now
generational
you can
upgrade. Yeah.
find some 12S Ultras out there, and like even if you try and import one, prices
Hmm.
have fallen a little bit. So I think you can now get a 12S Ultra brand new for like 900.
Yeah,
And at
yeah. I
900,
about a month or
that's
so ago, I
insane.
on Swap, actually, I saw one being sold for like around 800 even. It was reasonably like very clean, used for a review. So it's like a reviewer selling his unit,
Yeah.
but um, it still is a very. I mean, and I got a chance to see the concept version of that. I also got a chance to see the main one, the general one that
Sure.
was released. The concept has that dual sensor, the dual 1-inch sensors, one in the center to be able to work with the lens, and then with the actual standard one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think overall Xiaomi had a lot of announcements, a lot of hardware released. The fact that they had the 7 Gen 1 in there with the Xiaomi 12, the 13 Lite, and then of course the 13 that we got a chance to play with, and the 13 Pro. Overall, where I'm seeing here is we still have that experience where the better all-rounder devices are China only, and I feel like what we get internationally is somewhat of a slightly different variation of it.
Yeah.
And it's this. I mean, I'm not going to deny the fact that this was a very big surprise at the time when we were testing the Find X6 Pro. We didn't know that this was going to be China only.
Yeah.
As time got closer to the launch event, we start seeing more rumors, confirmation, and then later, almost like about a couple of few days before, we got confirmation on our side, and that explained to us why we with the units they sent us were the Chinese edition version. I honestly thought it was just going to be China first launch, and then a month or so later, like they've done in the past, we get the international variant.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, a small part of me, I'm hoping they still see the demand for it, that they'd still make a version of it that goes internationally. The Find
Yeah.
X6 did this year. They did it slightly different though. They went the 6 Pro was the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. The 6 ended up going with the Dimensity 9200. So they didn't do that two versions of the Find X5 Pro,
Mm-hmm.
where they're kind of keeping them different. But I feel like the 9200 is an amazing processor. We use it all the time with the X90 Pro. I mean, if you have to kind of basically say how much we like that device, that processor. So I'll say that I'm still wanting to put together, like I said, the video for that's going to be, the comparison will be next week. I still need to put that video regarding the S23 Ultra after 1 month, because I got sideswiped a little bit with the Redmi's this week. I got the devices early in the week, but I didn't realize the embargo was on Thursday or Friday or Thursday or Friday. Thursday. Today's Friday.
Who
Okay.
knows?
I'm just bad at days. I'm just bad at days. Um, 725. Oh my God, that is crazy. Okay. But no, I wanted to actually talk to you a little bit more about that 1-inch sensor video that you put out, because
Sure.
you kind of talked about all of the cameras that are so far are available with the 989,
Mm-hmm.
and you're saying basically you also did some updates on your book. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on,
Yeah, we can definitely
because you
jump
did
in.
part
So
one, right? And I don't want to take away too much from, because I don't think part
yeah,
two is out, right? Part two is
no, part
still
two is gonna be out next week.
next week. Peace. Okay.
The I've got in mind four distinct sections to talk
Okay.
about, so I'm
Yeah, yeah.
not sure if that's gonna be four or more videos, but the first two are shot, and so the second one's gonna be coming out next week.
So you're trying to
And
match
and
the
I
John
feel
Wick series, basically. You're going, chapter one, chapter two,
I
chapter three,
know
and
I'm
then
the John
chapter
Wick of
four.
camera reviewers.
You know,
I get
2 minutes
thrown
into
through
the
plate
video, and
glass
Juan's taking
windows
shots right
over and
there.
over and
Shot,
over
shot,
again.
shot, 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 shot. No, got it. Yeah, yeah. Sorry.
So the main reason why I'm trying to put together a little bit of video commentary on a specific feature, not a specific phone. I feel too often we've hyped new camera technologies and they haven't really delivered significant differences or improvements for consumers. And we keep muddling this conversation by talking about extreme advances in photography, but then only showcasing the lowest level point and shoot kind of use.
Yeah.
I feel like this is DxO's business model. Not to like pick a fight, but they only review in a very shallow surface auto mode
Mm-hmm.
kind of way. And I feel that benefits phones like the iPhone, and I think it benefits phones like the Pixel, but it does a huge disservice to other camera systems that have different types of features, more in-depth camera controls, more photographic uses.
Mm-hmm.
And so someone who is super casual point and shoot, they pull the phone out of their pocket, they push a shutter button, they put the phone back in their pocket. Literally that.
Yeah.
That's a huge chunk of the audience. I'm sure there are people who have never tapped on their screen to focus their camera.
Yeah.
Like literally that's all they do. That person should buy a Pixel 5a.
Yeah.
Like stop. You there is no point. And instead, techies have sold that person betterer cameras and betterer cameras and betterer cameras, and we still lockstep like we were talking about a Galaxy S4. You know, back in the early days, if you bought a mid-ranger phone, you were punished with terrible laggy performance and miserable camera
Absolutely.
sensors.
It was a very different experience. Mid-rangers, well,
Sure.
and that was during a time where flagships weren't as expensive. That was the other thing that we need to keep in
Yeah, a
mind.
flagship was a $600 phone.
Yeah, $600 you were paying a flagship.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but yeah, sorry, can go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah,
Your
no,
point.
it's that's exactly the point. Is
Yeah.
now we are building these incredible imaging platforms and systems. But to me, that is the same as taking your great aunt who takes her phone out of her purse, taps the shutter button for a miserably composed, just day in the life kind of point and shoot snapshot, and puts the phone back in her purse. If you took your great aunt and gave her a Sony A7, she would take worse photos. She
Oh,
would
yeah.
not take better photos. You
Well,
give her,
and she'll hate the experience because she's not going
and
to.
she'll hate
Yeah,
the experience.
exactly. Yeah.
You give her $10,000 worth of camera gear, and her photo quality, output, and performance is going to drop significantly.
Yeah.
And it's not as dire when we're talking about 1-inch camera sensor phones, but these are camera sensors that deliver some improvements to that casual point and shoot. But if you take the same situations, you take a Pixel 6a and a Vivo X90 Pro, and I go out to a beautiful park in nice light, and I take a photo of my daughter, they're gonna look kind of the same. The same sort of maybe torso to head shot.
Mm-hmm.
The Vivo is gonna be a little shallower depth of field. The Pixel 6a is going to have a slightly busier background. And if you're looking at them on Instagram through miserable compression for Android devices on phone screens, they're going to look almost identical because all of that went into the camera sensor differences aren't really being taxed to any great degree.
Yeah.
So the series of videos that I'm trying to put out is sort of dispelling the idea that every single time we say better camera, it's just hype. When we say 200 megapixels, that does almost nothing for the consumer photography experience, and there's only a very small number of situations where a photographer who knows what they're doing can really get some benefit out of tinier and tinier and tinier sub-pixels. Those sensors don't get bigger. And this is what's frustrating, is like I was trying to look up while you were talking about other phones, I was trying to look up the Xiaomi 13 Pro companion sensors. Even on DP review, RIP DP review, they go through all this, right? It's got the Sony the Sony IMX989. It's this size sensor. It's this dimensions. It's got this diagonal. It's a crop factor of this. And it also has 50 megapixel ultra wide and telephoto. And you're like, no, I need to know what those sensor sizes are. The 50 megapixels tells you nothing. I can put 50 megapixels on the smallest sensor. I think
I was going to say the IMX 766 is actually a 50 megapixel camera. Yeah, it
doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, the number. Yeah, I think we need to step away from the number. I think we need to step away from the number of megapixels because we've gone astronomical at this point. 200, 108. You know, those numbers.
I guarantee you, in the next 2 years, Samsung is going to do a 5x5 grid. And that's going to be a 300 megapixel sensor.
Oh
And
my
it
god.
doesn't mean anything if we don't change the sensor size.
Size.
If we don't
You're still
increase the
splitting the
surface
same small
area,
surface. Yeah.
then you get the same experience that we've had since the Galaxy S20 Ultra. That was great. That's
Yeah.
awesome. But it's not fundamentally different in terms of optics, depth of field, the things that make a photograph and not
Mhm.
just a casual point and shoot snapshot.
Yeah. Yeah.
That doesn't change. And so I'm going to be kind of mixing this up a little. The first two videos are the good and the bad.
Yeah. I
Because every
remember.
time we change a component, there are definitely improvements, but there are also going to be some compromises that we have to face. Like there's a
Mhm.
balance. You can't really circumvent optical physics and always only just make gooder things. So there are definitely some compromises that you have to keep in mind when you're shooting on a 1-inch sensor. But the first video had to be the good stuff because
So
we've done such a piss poor job in tech commentary, really highlighting what makes this different. And so consumers are going to hear these things. And unfortunately, we've had too many experiences like I love my Sonys. I've got to throw them under the bus for the Pro I advertising a 1-inch camera sensor
1 inch
that
type.
was
Yeah.
cropped down with a lens that really only made it a 1/1.3 inch camera sensor. And so that confuses the conversation and it makes it seem like all of this is just marketing hype. I put out a comparison between a 200 megapixel Samsung and a 50 megapixel Vivo,
Hmm.
and almost all of the critical comments were people just regurgitating marketing.
Hmm.
Like no one had a sense of what I was trying to demonstrate, why I was trying to show pixel level detail. The claim from Samsung is you get so much more croppability. But I would crop these images and they'd look nearly identical. So this 4 times resolution advantage didn't beat larger pixels that delivered better pixel level detail on my Vivo. And
Yeah.
that to me is a very critical examination. So you set consumers up for the bestest camera ever,
Hmm.
then they get it, and they're not trying to push the capabilities of any of this stuff because YouTubers on YouTube who influence what we buy only show you doing the dumb knuckle dragging basics on a phone that legitimately can start to compete with micro four thirds professional camera gear.
Absolutely.
You're completely lopsided. So as long as we keep sort of fronting this average consumers don't do things with their phones on phones that average consumers do not buy.
Oh, that's the other thing. Yeah, yeah. None of these phones that we're looking at, like even the Find X6 Pro, I feel like it's overkill for a lot of people what they're trying to do. I mean, seriously, the
I'll be
device.
surprised if in one fiscal quarter the Find X6 Pro breaks 1 million units.
Are we talking domestic or international? Because I'm
Well,
thinking
that's just it.
domestic.
It's not international.
No, that's the thing. But that's the weird part about it is you feel like there is the Chinese market for some reason seems to be very much in they demand the higher end models for some reason.
Yeah.
They're choosing to release it only in China. Like even Sony, this is the weirdest thing that for me that's ever
Oh,
been.
Sony sells a grip in China. China's their
Yeah, but
biggest market now.
they
Yeah.
shifted. Like when we first started, I'm not going to say first started, but at least when I first started working with Sony, most of the international global launch was always done for like I think it was like the Xperia One Mark II. I started
Mhm.
working with Sony like after the one was released. I think you covered the one at the time. The biggest thing about it is we used to get international releases and everything released at the same time. And as time goes on, more and more, it's been focused to launches in China first, a month or
Yeah.
two before the
No, it makes
international
perfect
market.
sense though, because
Then
why
Europe,
dedicate units that are sitting on shelves?
exactly, and then
You,
at some point the US gets it. When we
no,
get
you sell in your hottest market, you
absolutely,
saturate the demand for that, then you
yeah.
move to the EU and you
Hmm.
know it's going to sell well, and
Oh,
then you
but
go to the
they
United
have
States
they have
where you're
collaborations
going to
there with
make
carriers. That's the other thing.
for
They
sure.
work with carriers still, as opposed to what we
But
used to have here.
you make about 1,000 phones for the United States, and you see if any of those move through B&H. And if they do, you make a few more. But no,
Yeah,
it makes perfect sense. The United States is a toxic market for any kind of outside competition.
it is very, which is why I think in many ways I'm kind of like go back to the OnePlus conversation because I feel like OnePlus is navigating that experience because they are in the U.S. market, but At least with the 11 current version of the 11, we don't have any carrier relationships. So they're not in a store,
No.
they're not on a shelf. They're literally going on. And I do want to highlight this, and this is just not a paid promotion or anything like that, but they're trying to, and I have to say it because it's going to sound like an ad, but it's not.
Sure.
They just announced on Monday the trial of the OnePlus 11. You can buy the OnePlus 11 and try it for 100 days. If you don't like it,
Hmm.
you can return
Send
it
it
and get
back.
your money back. Like actual sent back and get money back
Hmm.
kind of conversation.
But here's the problem: is right now we have trained 80% of the United States consumer market shopping for cell phones to only consider devices that have a marketing budget of about $1 billion a year. And that's
Which
three
also kind of
phones. That's Google Pixel, that's Samsung Galaxy, and that's Apple iPhone.
at
And that's
recent
it.
years, yeah. And
And anything else is just the walk-in traffic to low-cost carriers. So
I know.
Motorola is the number 3. But if we're talking premium tier devices, the only devices you can tell people to spend over $500 are companies that are willing to spend at least $1 billion a year in marketing. So OnePlus is doing this really cool thing, and we should be highlighting this, and other techies should be telling their family and friends, like, if you want to test drive a really nice phone, you can take this for a really long test drive. That's great. And
Yeah,
this is the OnePlus 11 is easily one of the best bang for buck performance options in the United States. It puts a serious hurt on a Galaxy S22. I mean, Galaxy S23.
S22 plus, well, S23
But
or S23 plus, but yeah.
yeah, 23 or 23 plus. But I just mean in terms of pricing, it's
Mhm.
cheaper than an S23 and
Oh yeah,
it's comparable to a 23 plus. But they don't spend $1 billion a year on marketing. And
no,
that's what's so disheartening about this tech conversation is it has nothing to do with the merit of each gadget. It is
yeah.
not a meritocracy. It is who can buy their position in consumer mindshare.
Who can
And
get the eyeballs? Who can stay long enough on in front of you when you're making these decisions,
for sure.
or when you happen to think about to make that decision, and then suddenly the only thing that pops into your head is the last thing that you've been seeing consistently all across the media. I know, I understand absolutely. There's a reason why
Hmm.
car dealerships keeps advertising cars commercials all over the place, even though people don't buy cars so often. There's a
Right.
and lawyers are always putting those commercials in there. It's because they want that one thing that you pull out of your brain at the time that
Hmm.
you need it to be them.
So
The
just kind of wrapping that up though, I
Yeah,
feel
yeah,
like that is a part of the conversation that I feel needs to be addressed if we're talking about photography
yeah.
is we have a very difficult time classifying phones, sort of quantifying what makes a phone different. And reviewers typically land on this sliding scale of average consumer. And that is not what any of these devices represent. Average consumer is a $300 Poco or a Pixel A series or Galaxy A
Yeah, like a
series on sale.
450. I think it would be more like average when people start looking at how much are they really willing to spend out of their pocket to buy this phone,
Well,
a
sure,
phone that
but
they're
the
not
but
even going to finance. But yeah,
the top selling Android phone every year is always a Galaxy A10 series. It's
yeah,
not even the A50 series. It's an
yeah. No, the 850
what is it? It's an
starting at
A14,
the 54
A13.
this
Is that the one
year.
that was the
I want to
top
say the
selling
813.
Android of
Yeah,
last year?
because it
So
has the
we
Galaxy
already
name in
know.
there and it's a Samsung,
Yeah.
and people just like, hey, I can afford this.
And this is why I get so bristly about the Note 23 is because we know Samsung is playing a game with marketing. We know they're going to highlight the majority of the reviews are going to focus on the Ultra. So they
Yeah,
call it a Galaxy S. And if any of that information sort of filters out to people that are just shopping for a new phone, they're going to hear Galaxy S is the bestest Android. So then they're going to go to their carrier. If they even hear that, they're just going to hear Samsung is the bestest of the expensive Androids. And then they're going to go to their carrier and they're going to see a Samsung that they can get for like $100. And that reviewer said that the Samsungs were the bestest. Let me get this. This Samsung is garbage. And you're like, yeah, you bought a 2-year-old $100 phone. Like, it's the same problem I had way back in the day when I was speaking to an aunt and she was like, oh, I just love my new Mac. And you're like, great, that's awesome. What, you didn't like your PC? You know, Windows was terrible. Well, what PC did you have? Well, I have a 5-year-old Dell that I originally bought for
I thought you were going to say
$400.
like an iPack or something like that, like the
Well,
old,
no, no, no,
old,
no.
old
Yeah,
compact. Yeah,
compact,
yeah,
right?
back in
Well,
the old days.
this was way back in the day, you know. So we
Yeah,
were
yeah.
talking about desktops. It's like, yeah, I bought this Dell for $400 5 years ago, and it's caked with dust, and the fans can't even move air through it, and Windows is so terrible. And your brand new Mac, how much did you spend on that? $2,500. You're like, you don't think it's not Dell versus Apple? You think it might be $500 versus
Had you
$2,500?
gone
You
for the
think
two
that might
thousand
be the
dollar
difference?
Dell, maybe you would have gotten a. Yeah, no, no, no. I think there's a big yeah, there's a big disparity between how you recommend and what people buy, and I
Sure.
agree with you. I think the reality is, yeah, this is literally all they do. It's Samsung Galaxy, Samsung Galaxy, Samsung Galaxy,
Hmm.
and if it's an A10, an A50, an S20, an S23, or whatever, it's to the consumer, they're buying
They're all
that
Samsung.
piece. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
buying that piece, not
But when
realizing
I
that
buy a Apple iPhone, it just works. And you're like, yeah, because you didn't buy an iPhone SE 2020.
exactly.
You know,
You're buying a 14 or 13. You're buying literally this is their flagship
my
experience
Apple
in
iPhone works so much better than my Galaxy. And like, well, what did you buy on your Galaxy? A Galaxy A53. And what iPhone did you
what did
buy?
you
An
buy?
iPhone
A
14
14
Plus? And you're
Pro.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
you could have bought three Galaxy
I-
A53s for that
I'm a little bit
iPhone.
concerned though this year, at least the last two generations, the 53 and the 54, both years, Samsung is going in with an Exynos chip, underpowered, and just they're messing. I feel like the
This,
50 series
hold on, hold on,
is no
hold on.
longer
I'm gonna. Well, no, I don't believe the 50 series is the same
after the
Insta
52.
recommendation that
Oh,
it
the
used to be.
53, yeah, yeah,
I would still go with an A52 over an A53,
or a
easy.
54.
Um,
Yeah,
but here's the thing: A54 is using the Exynos 1280. It's not the same Exynos as the A53, and so the
no,
A54, the core configuration is now quad. Instead of two big cores to six little cores, it's four big cores to
to
four
four.
little cores. And the Exynos, oh God, I'm trying to do this from memory and I'm probably getting something wrong. I think this Exynos is the one that is more similarly configured to the Snapdragon 865. So the core
Okay.
configuration has, I believe, it has one overclocked A78, three standard clocked A78s, and then four A55s. And that's the core configuration that we've loved on MediaTek. That's the core configuration that we still love on Snapdragon 870s. And I think it's similar, like it's underclocked a little. So it's
Mm,
kind of like getting a Snapdragon 778. I don't know that
I know.
Samsung can make that chip well. I think their 5 nanometer and 4 nanometer fabrication processes are still a generation or two generations behind TSMC. But
Hmm.
I believe the A54 should get us back to what we liked about the A52. It
I hope so.
shouldn't be the laggy, stuttery mess that the A53 was. Fingers
Uh,
crossed. I don't
Fingers
know.
crossed.
We're only just now getting information about the phone coming out and people getting their hands on it.
Well, it's coming out at the end of the
But
month for us here in the US. I think in
right,
the, or at least for Europe, Samsung PR there seeded some units to some people. I think that's how they were able to get it. But I think my biggest thing has been how because the 50 series is also it's one of the bigger sellers because it's typically that's the one that competes somewhat in
yep,
price point with like the A series on Pixel.
hmm,
Like the 7A is going to come out, the 6A is out. Those
sure,
are the people that go in there and like, okay, should I pick up the Pixel 7A or a 6A or do I go with an A54? Last year it was a very decision. It was a weird decision. Not only was it badly delivered, but it was recalled. So the 53 stopped being sell. They stopped selling it in the U.S. Although I had mine because of a jump on demand. When I turned it in, they're like, "We still have this." I'm like, "No, you don't.
yeah.
It just I
No,
still
you
have one."
don't.
I
I
was like,
still have. You don't still have it.
"I
I
have the
still have
last
it.
one you have, and this is why now you have it as I'm handing it." No, no, it's one
Right.
of those weird conversations where you're like, "Yeah, it was definitely not the right direction for them." So I'm
Dan
hoping.
corrected me. It's not the Exynos 1280. It's the Exynos 1380. So
Okay.
I had the model number off. I knew I was going to get something wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the core configuration we're looking at should be at least 50% more powerful than the core configuration we had before. Sorry, we've gone way off topic, and I just kind of want to wrap up where we were
Yeah, yeah.
talking about
I
one-inch
think we
camera
should start
sensors.
diving into a little bit more of this other stuff that we had.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah. Let me finish this, and then we can kind of get to our last couple topics here. But
sure.
I really need people to understand those differences, those barriers. Like there are different tiers and different categories, and I've been fighting this with phones in general, but now I feel like I need to fight this with cameras too.
Hmm.
I genuinely believe if you're the person who takes the snapshotty photo, you get a Pixel A series.
Yeah,
Not because you're gonna save some money and oh, but you know the cameras aren't as good or as a more expensive phone. The Pixel A series and mid-ranger phones in general always land really high up on the list whenever we do blind taste tests. When you don't know what phone took what picture, suddenly Pixel A series are like top of the charts. Why is that? It's because you have a longer depth of field, you've got mature software that knows how to process
absolutely.
the images from these older camera sensors. They're even better for portrait modes. If you take a portrait mode photo from a camera that already has a ton of natural depth of field, it's going to have a hard time cutting you out accurately because you're already starting to blur the distance between the eyeball and the bridge of your nose.
Yep.
Like, that's how intense these camera sensors are. I never use the portrait modes on my Vivo or my Xiaomi. It's too fake at that point, and it's not as good as using the portrait mode on something like a Pixel 6a. So all of those things, I genuinely believe those consumers would just like the experience better. If I
Yeah.
put a Pixel 6a and a Vivo X90 in the
Hmm.
hands of someone who only pushed the shutter button, they would like the Pixel 6a. Then I would tell them the Pixel 6a is 1/3 the price of that Vivo. The cost savings would just be the icing on that cake.
You just
It's not that
described
they,
the perfect Pixel 6a commercial, but yeah, keep going.
but no, I'm serious. Like
Google
I
Google should be
genuinely
using this
believe.
right now, like clipping this. Yeah,
But please take it because
yeah,
this is a consumer education issue that
it
we
is.
can't break through the marketing. The marketing is selling people on devices that makes their photography experience worse if they really are these knuckle dragging average consumers that influencers believe exist out there, right?
Yeah,
So if it's that extreme an issue with photography experience and education, then we actually do need Google to do that. It's not throwing shade. It's getting the right consumer the right fit for their needs.
yeah.
That being said, I am a photo enthusiast. I've been shooting since high school on film back cameras. I like composing a shot. I like candids. I like macros. I have tastes in what I prefer for my photography experience. And the second you approach this with any critical eye towards the type of output, the second you tap on the screen to focus
Yeah.
before pushing your shutter button, you are immediately rewarded with a better experience once you start climbing up to those higher tiers of cameras. So,
Absolutely.
if you would like less of me soapboxing and more of me just trying to educate, on top of doing a couple of videos just focusing on this one sensor technology, I also wrote a book.
What?
So, yeah, I was
Wait,
surprised as
you
anyone
put
else.
words
Now,
on paper?
no paper.
No paper.
No
Okay.
paper has ever been involved.
Okay.
So I wrote this book 7 years ago because the book is the same age as my daughter. I literally finished writing the first draft of this book while my wife was in the hospital in labor.
Aha.
So this book is called Take Better Photos: Smartphone Photography for Noobs. It's available on Amazon Kindle. Uh, I try to refresh it every year. Sometimes I go like an extra couple of months. This time I didn't update for 2022 because we were just starting to get some hints on new camera tech. So this has been the longest I've ever gone in between updating the book, and I'm really glad I waited because from the Xiaomi 12s Ultra to now, there is a substantial difference in the kinds of conversations we can have about sensor size, resolution, depth of
Yep.
field,
Yep.
bokeh,
Yep.
all of these things that contribute to your photography. And I really need North Americans to know that we are now 2 years behind the rest of the world on the most exciting new camera tech, and we're trying to
Yep.
sell gimmicks instead of better photography hardware and solutions. If you already own the book, go to your Kindle app and update it. The update should be live now. This is the single biggest update I've ever made to the book. It was originally 200 pages, it's now 305.
That is one massive
Every
OTA,
single
my friend.
every single passage, I had sections in there where I was still using like Galaxy S7s and iPhone 6Ss as my comparison points. Well, Android cameras do this and iPhone cameras do that. And so every single passage has been updated to be a little bit more current, a little bit more modern. I still have some of those older ones because someone might have a 5 or a 6 year old phone. So I still
Yeah.
have some of that data still in there. But every opportunity I could take to talk about larger sensors, higher resolution sensors, better pixel binning. I have new passages talking about what is the difference between a 1-inch sensor, how do you calculate the crop factor on a 1-inch sensor, and then also some of the critical editorials that I've written, I've also included in the book, talking about how resolution to me is almost always the least important aspect of a camera upgrade.
Yeah.
So take better photos, smartphone photography for noobs. If you haven't purchased it, it is available on Kindle. If you have purchased it, get the update. Make sure the Kindle app sort of updates the book for you, and then you'll also get some new samples that I've put in there, some new photo samples, and some new charts. So even for things like talking about depth of field and focus fall off, I've updated the graphic on that so it's a little bit clearer to understand what I'm talking about with like distance and depth of field. So
Makes sense.
I'm really excited. This one was a biggie. It's a 40 megabyte book because there are quite a few photo samples in there. And there's a lot of additional new material that I've added over time. So check it out.
Please. Yep.
If you'd like I said, a more educational conversation with a focus on phone photography, not just DSLR or mirrorless photography, I think you'll dig it. And then it won't just be me being cranky and ranting about other YouTube reviewers. It'll just be focused on the good, fun camera tech stuff. So
I'll make sure to
that's what it
update the
is.
I'll update the show notes actually on YouTube with the link directly to the page once we're done. I didn't I didn't
Oh,
get
for
a
sure.
chance to do that when I set it up this morning, but
And I
yeah,
guess I could like drop a link in the comments. Hold on, let me do that.
that could help. That would help. I mean, definitely. But the biggest thing that I'll probably say before we move on, we're kind of getting close to the to that 1.5 hour mark. Also, make sure to check out the Patreon if you're not subscribed to the Patreon over on Juan, because he did. That's how you get access to that part 1 ahead of time before it goes public, and people get access to it in part 2, 3, and 4 that we're talking about. So, definitely. And then yes, Juan just dropped the link in the chat. That's going to be a direct link to the Amazon page. The next couple of things that we're going to talk about are somewhat, I mean, well, the first thing we'll jump on from here is the Redmi release. So Redmi this dropped, it was yesterday, I think. There's the 12 series updates, obviously, for 2023. The biggest reason why I was kind of interested on that is that we're finally seeing a 200 megapixel camera sensor on a Redmi, and this is the Redmi
Mm-hmm.
Pro Plus 5G, the 12 Pro Plus 5G, and then the 12 Pro has basically it's a similar experience to what we got somewhat last year. Slightly less expensive, but you're not getting that 200. But the big thing that I wanted to kind of talk about, kind of in general, both of these devices, because I didn't get a chance to get the 12, and I think there's the 12 5G and then there's the 12. That's how they differentiate. They didn't do a
I
12 Lite this
know.
year, although I feel like the 12 Lite is coming at some point. Um,
Yeah.
they launched the first 4 Gen 1 chipset that I've seen on the market as well. Xiaomi also just launched the 7 Gen 1 on the 12 Lite, on the 13 Lite. So we're starting to see those lenses. Those processors.
Barry just bought my book. He's a good dude.
Cha-ching. Okay. Thank you very much, Barry, for the support. And the biggest thing I'll probably say is great mid-rangers, great performers, very similar to what we've
Mm-hmm.
seen in the past. Right now, out of the box, I got the phone on Monday, and I was still like super swamped with the Find X6 Pro, and I really didn't get a chance to do that much time with it. And then I got confused with the embargo. Long story short, great little guys from a day-to-day activity. Cameras needs a little bit more time to actually live with. Um, it goes back to that conversation. It's a number of megapixels. If you're impressed with a 200 megapixel camera sensor, then I think you probably will like the 12 Pro the 12 Pro Plus. If you feel like you want to get the best experience, I feel like the 12 Pro feels like it hits that right spot. Same
Hmm.
display, same refresh rate, slightly slower on the charging, no curved back on the design, but I feel like it gives that best experience overall of what the 12 series needs to offer at the best,
For sure.
premium experience. Um, but the 200 megapixel, I mean, it has its sense, it has its functions. It's just that in auto mode, as you were talking, you don't even get a chance to use it. You're using a bin version of that. And
Yeah.
to use the 200 megapixel, you have to jump into pro mode, high resolution, select. And even when you jump into high resolution, you have to select the actual 200 megapixel for it to activate the full readout of the sensor. And then you'll
Hmm.
get about
And
like a
this is
32
this is
megapixel
also
image.
the thing that I think is so I think is so disrupting, is so distracting to the consumer education conversation. I have some minor, but I don't think they impact the consumer experience much, but
Hmm.
I have some critical problems with Google. Google advertises that you get 50 megapixel cameras on the 7 and 7 Pro,
Hmm.
but they don't even offer a full resolution mode. I
We
don't
st-
believe you should be able to advertise 50 MP when you don't allow for an actual 50 MP image capture.
yeah,
So
no, no.
at least like the frustration of really using the full resolution mode, digging through menus and settings to get
And
to a
and
mode
it's
that allows
yeah.
you the option to do that is one thing, but you should be able to do it. If you're going to advertise at me 200 megapixels, I want to get 200 megapixels.
Jump
It's
in the
just
round with the 200. Yeah, exactly. Show us the
yeah.
flex. I mean, it's just to me, like, because what I was trying to do originally in the images, like when you compare the 12 Pro and the 12 Pro Plus, the images literally look very similar. It's the same processor, the same manufacturer, same software. The color science
Hmm.
is exactly the same. You're hard pressed to tell which one provided you the better
Yeah,
image. To jump
for
into
sure.
when you go into that 200 megapixel image and you do shoot a 200 megapixel image and then you start cropping in, you start seeing some of the differences. But to get to that level, it's not, as you said, it's like but it's like a reference point, but not necessarily easy to find. It's not in the default
Yeah.
mode. You have to jump through a few hoops and to know exactly, and it's not something that jumps at you right away. I appreciate what they're trying to do, it's making it accessible to get that number in there, and I feel like the Note series has always been some of their better performers in the sense of being at balance between performance and cost. And they
Hmm.
typically run really good sales on them also when they first launched them. So great devices. I need to spend a little bit more time with them to get that better experience.
But the
I
Redmis have
still
always been solid. I
they're
mean, some
solid. No, no,
really, really
and
great
they're using a
bang for
great
buck
chipset, the
options.
Dimensity 1080. The Pro Plus has 8 gigs with 256, storage. Still have a headphone jack. We have stereo speakers here as well. We have also great, Bluetooth
Yeah.
5.3. So a lot of good connectivity. And PUBG runs beautifully on this. Like even in 60 frames per second. Like for me, yeah, it's you got to be able to kind of get that experience. Overall,
Hmm.
very, very, very pleased there. But you also had an opportunity to play with something else that I haven't had a chance to play with. Is it you? Not
Ooh.
Ulanzi. You perfect.
UPerfect.
You
Yeah, I got
perfect,
this guy
baby.
down
That's what
here.
it is.
No, you're
That's
perfect.
right. Nah, baby,
No,
you know how it
you're
is.
gorgeous.
You're the you
So
perfect V. You're
this is
wireless.
also another. Oh, and it's kind of dusty because my office is trashed. So this is another thing that hopefully we'll have a video out next year. I need to say
We're gonna
right up
wait till
front,
next year. That's a long time, though.
I'm
What?
next week. Oh my god, my brain is not
Once,
firing
because
on
I
all
was like thinking
cylinders.
like you're gonna start scheduling videos for next. I'm
I
like,
mean, even
geez,
for my own personal podcast, we usually go like at 9. Like I'm
yeah.
just now
Now
kind of getting up
you're
to
starting the
speed. My
show. Yeah,
brain
yeah, yeah.
is
Sorry.
so here I'm
2024
gonna
coming at you 20 January 1st, 2024.
right
The you
next
perfect.
year. See you next year. Oh, it's December.
Bye.
Haha, how funny.
That's
So
right.
this is a portable monitor. This is the new UPerfect V. It looks very much like any other UPerfect. It's got the little hinge bar, the assembly. It's got all these little ports on the side.
Yeah,
You
yeah, yeah.
can connect it to desktop modes. You can hook it up to
Actually, hold on.
portable consoles like the Steam
Let's change
Deck.
the point of view. I feel like we need you to be a little bit bigger. Here you go. Thank
I'm fine with that. Make me
you.
big.
Well, just to see the
Um,
tech, we just want to be able to, because it's so thin when you put it sideways, one, it disappears.
hmm Yeah. So, but that's kind of the cool thing is
That's
it
the
can
shtick.
turn it
Yeah.
sideways right here, but there is a little extra module right there. It's like a little
Cameras?
teeny bump. And this right here is a receiver to a dedicated wireless hub. So you can connect directly to the monitor just like any other laptop dock or portable display that we've both been playing with all these
The
years.
same old peasant way that
Or
everybody else does it. But yeah, keep going.
I
You're
know, right?
talking.
Oh, you had to use the cable.
Well, like
How goes?
what? Can you
Um,
even Bluetooth? Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
but now there's this little broadcast. So you can connect over HDMI or USB, and it's got its own little power plug here. So you plug something into this, and it wirelessly sends a dedicated signal over to the
Nice.
monitor.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So you played with one of the wireless laptops, like the Next
Yeah,
Dock
well, yeah,
360
we both got
wireless?
the yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So both TK and I played with those. My big problem with wireless is it introduces a lot of latency, a lot of lag, and it
Especially
cuts
when
your
you're
frame
using a
rates.
common protocol. Yeah, the protocol was literally like even when they
Miracast.
were demoing it for me at CES, there was a
Yeah.
few hiccups. We weren't even at the show floor. We were in a private like showstoppers pepcom kind
Sure.
of thing, and it was just not having it. Yeah, no, I know. Sorry.
No. And that kind of wireless interference. If you have an office full of gadgets like mine, wireless connectivity can also be a little problematic there too.
Yeah, yeah.
So you get a Miracast solution where the Miracast receiver is built into the dock, and you have to count on um, a laggier connection and sort of a maximum frame rate of around 30 FPS.
Yeah.
That's not bad. I mean,
No,
it's
no.
usable. And you watch a video on that, it's going to look fine. That is what it is. Going to a proprietary transmitter and receiver on this helps alleviate some of those concerns. So you
Yeah.
need a separate little hub that you plug the device into, and then you can walk around at least to like a medium-sized dining room.
How big is that display,
Or,
by the
or
way? Is that a 15er or?
it's a 15, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of holding it up right there with nothing on it. I mean, if I were really good at doing video podcasting, I would have at least tried to set up something to send a signal to. I'm not that great. You'll have to wait for the full video.
You gotta do better, Juan. Oh yeah, maybe make a video. That would be nice. Yeah.
Yeah, gonna be next year. Next
Next
year, there's
year.
gonna be a video out about this. But in getting to this now, the responsiveness for a touch input is a little
Oh, it's
bit
also
better.
touch. Okay. Yeah, yeah.
It's not as it's not as fluid or as immediate as a cabled connection. But if you tried to do touchscreen on the Next Dock or the UPerfect wireless, like
Okay.
you would move your finger and it could be almost three quarters, almost a second before the gesture would
It's a
register.
noticeable, yeah, the delay
You're
is noticeable. It's quite a bit
you're
noticeable, exactly.
touching the screen and that's sending a Miracast signal to your phone, and then your phone goes, they moved their finger, and sends the information back to the screen. Well, a 30th of a second is already bad, but you've doubled that just in transmission time. The gesture takes time. It has to wait for you to finish the gesture. It can take almost a second round trip to properly register your finger swipe.
I still
But this
prefer the wired
proprietary,
connection on those, even though we have the
I do too.
wireless, which is nice, but yeah.
I, I know so many people go in like, oh, but I need Dex wireless, and you're like, why? I get it, but I don't, and it's just so much better when you use a cable.
Oh no,
But now
Dex
here
wireless
we've
makes
got
perfect sense when you're trying to connect to a TV, something that you're not able to get close to, and you're okay with somewhat of a little bit of a lag. But I think it's like
sure, but
with a laptop.
I'm not talking about someone who's making the learned rational comparison. I'm talking about someone who's just like up their own rear about, oh, but I can't be tethered by cables. Because a next dock wireless isn't that situation. You're talking about like, hey, I'm in a conference room and I've got a PowerPoint presentation and I want to be able to run this presentation from my phone and show this on another wireless display, and I don't have an HDMI to run to that. I've even given presentations like that off of old LGs and Samsung phones.
Mhm.
So I totally get that. A wireless laptop dock makes way less sense to me for that being the default. So many people act like it needs to be wireless. I couldn't use something like that if my phone were tethered with a cable. And you're like, that's dumb. You're kind of dumb. Or like also some of the criticisms that I've gotten on wearable displays being kind of
Yeah.
the same. Like, oh, a display on your face, I just can't handle the cable that runs off the earpiece. And you're like, you do not want the lag of a wireless display running that hot on your face. You're gonna go instant vomit.
Oh, absolutely. The,
Like
the refresh rate, the lag, yeah,
everything would be miserable.
it's one of the biggest problems with first generation VR headsets that we're still. I mean, even I think that's
Yeah,
what's making the Sony the new VR2 so popular is the fact that it runs at 120 frames per second. The delay is so low. You're able to run cabled. There's still a lot of benefit there, and I feel like where the Nexon and the UPerfect did provide the solution that if you do need that experience, you forgot your cable, you still want to be able to get that laptop experience.
yeah,
It's easy to do. It's you jump
sure.
into it as long as you're not in a
So
very
this
saturated
this is
environment.
something different because you don't use DeX wireless.
That's true. You have to use wired.
So
You
you
get
plug DeX into this transmitter. The transmitter sends a wireless signal to the laptop dock, and because it's a proprietary connection, it's a little bit more like a fancy gaming headset.
oh, absolutely, yeah.
You could
The
use a
the
general
Logitech,
protocol like Bluetooth,
yeah.
and Bluetooth is really laggy, and that's not great for games. But a lot of really fancy gaming headsets have a proprietary puck, a USB receiver that you plug into your device, and you get a
Even wireless mice,
lag-free.
if you try to use it over Bluetooth
Yeah,
over a proprietary,
same.
you'll definitely notice it. Yeah,
You
exactly,
you go for the gaming mouse because it has
exactly.
the proprietary wireless signal. So instead of using stock Miracast parts, UPerfect has a base station, a little mini monolith from 2001: A Space Odyssey
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
sits up on your desk and connects and has its own power. So that's part of it. Is this is better wireless tech. This is a little bit more like the really fancy VR headset broadcast solutions, and those can be like $200 or $300
Yeah.
if you want high fidelity, low latency. You're blasting a completely different kind of wireless signal than just stock Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or a Miracast, whatever that transmits on.
Yeah, yeah.
That to me also though speaks to some of the issues with how do you use this? Because high fidelity, low latency means you sacrifice range.
Oh,
So
that's true.
you can go like small dining room. So you've got this propped up and you plug your phone into it and
Hmm.
you get ready for on your portable display, and it's a touch screen and it's decently responsive, and I can go from like my dining room to my couch, but I can't go much farther than that until the signal starts kind of cutting out and dropping
Hmm.
and it starts getting laggy. And I have this which is taking up space and needs its own power supply, and it's charging my phone, so at least it's still my phone is still going to be charged when I'm done with this kind of computer experience,
The
but then I need
broadcast.
to charge the monitor. And I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain like what is the use case where I needed hours of wireless tablet time and I
It's
needed to be more than 2 feet away from my phone to do
I
it.
I would think it's more about when you relate this thing or connect it to a PC and making it as a third, like a third monitor or a second monitor that you have that may not be necessarily positioned where you need to have it. Like to have it as a feed or maybe even a camera feed connecting a camera. I'm assuming you're able to switch
That makes
between
sense.
inputs on the display. Is that true? You're able to
Oh
jump
yeah, I
between
mean, yeah,
USB-C.
you can
So
swipe through, and if you
yeah,
want,
yeah. So
you can plug USB-C or HDMI, and you can flip back and forth between those two. So
that would be for me, like if I had to think about where I would, this for me solves the problem of where can I put a monitor that doesn't need to have a wire running to it, other than power, obviously, because I'm assuming the monitor needs power also. You don't need to have that HDMI to it, but then I can have it like sitting on the side. I can use it for more touch interface if I want to, but I can also switch between multiple inputs, like say the camera
I
or my PC.
totally hear you.
But you need
I
to figure out how to.
feel I don't know that there are many use cases for what you've described.
It's a very unique experience, a very
It's
unique
very
need.
unique.
Yeah, like for a setup for
Yeah.
streaming, maybe. But you're right, on a daily basis, like what is it that you're going to be making it? And I think that's
So
where
I'm wrapping up my time with it.
maybe
It
that's why you need the end of the year.
absolutely
I understand now.
helps. Yeah, why I'm going to be putting out my video next year.
Yeah.
It absolutely improves upon the wireless experience.
Yeah.
But the second I really start using it in earnest, I really prefer just having it connected directly to whatever I'm running it off of. Like if I'm going dual monitor with my laptop, which a portable display is such a great
I
resource.
feel like,
I
yeah,
mean,
that's
it's
like
such
the
a
number
great
one.
solution.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be 5 feet away from my laptop. Like you set up your laptop and you're using your laptop. So then you add a second display to your laptop and you've got a dual display for your laptop, and that's great. I don't feel this burning need that, oh, I've set up my laptop and I've set up this wireless transmitter receiver, and now I can move the screen as a Windows tablet away from my laptop. Like
You're right.
I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time with why we're so fixated on wireless when wireless is either a significantly poorer experience, or it's so much more that you have to do to make it a comparable experience to just having a long HDMI cable.
Which you're right, and which would solve 90% of what the problem is, and
Like
you could be
cutting
able.
the HDMI cable means adding another power brick and a transmitter and an HDMI cable.
So maybe here's a better my end.
So to get
Maybe
rid
a more
of
of a.
a 6 foot HDMI cable, I need a 3 foot HDMI cable and a USB-C cable and a charger.
Can you connect multiple monitors to one base station?
No,
Okay, I think maybe that I was still trying to.
no.
I was trying to grasp at like would there
It would
maybe a
be like
that
saying, can you use 5 gaming mice on one receiver? It would be
not
a
five
mess of
gaming
inputs. Like
mice. It would be
you
massive.
wouldn't be
Yeah, you
able
could do
to.
keyboard and mouse on the same receiver, but not five mice. Five mice.
No,
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, no, I'm with you. Um, okay. Well, I mean, I'm still looking forward to seeing how that
no.
challenge end up basically
I
being met.
it is a really fun toy. I mean,
It
it's
is.
great. It is
Yeah, yeah.
fun. I'm struggling to say, like, portable monitors, I think, are one of the most important accessories that someone can jump on. Getting one portable screen, and no matter what form factor or whatever way it's built for you, get
Yeah.
a portable screen, and it's going to play nice with select phones, tablets, laptops, desktops, cameras, game consoles.
I
You
was
get
about to
this
say
one
Steam Deck,
screen,
man. Yeah.
and it moves all
Hmm.
around, and it makes every other compute gadget that you own better. It makes the experience better. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not going to knock the few people out there that I feel they think they really want that experience to not have any cables or wires connected to it. But the reality of like how much money you put towards a portable display versus how much use you get out of it, adding wireless and a proprietary transmitter for wireless increases the costs. So there's a compromise where I can only use my portable display connected directly over a cable, or I can spend more and get this wireless option. But to spend more and get the best wireless version of this means packing so much more gear
Well,
and
I feel like
so
for
much more.
travel, I think to a certain point, so just to kind of before we get off the subject, I think for me the way I would look at it is the wireless solution wouldn't necessarily be the travel solution part of this. This is a it's a versatile
Sure.
system. It has the wired solution, which is the standalone, not the standalone, the standard experience that we've come to love and appreciate. And I
Hmm.
feel like that's going to be more of the travel experience because when you're traveling, you're
Hmm.
not going to carry so much. It's more when you're back at the base station, you come in and you
Hmm.
want to be able to get your phone. You plug your phone on the charge, put it on the table, launch it on the desk, and then you're sitting on the couch and you're sitting on the other side of the office and you're using Dex on that and experiencing your phone while it's getting charged. But when you
Sure.
travel, you just take the display and a wire and you leave the base station at home. And I feel like that would be more in my mind how I would use it because you're right. You're
I
carrying so
I
much more. Yeah.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
What I have a problem with this one specifically, I feel your division of labor is accurate. But when was the last time you picked up a metal hinged, battery enabled 15-inch monitor and
Wait,
just
that display has a
casually,
battery?
well, it needs to.
Oh, I thought it was wired power. No, no, no. I'm sorry. I'll be very frank. UPerfect. My experience with UPerfect has been primarily their laptop. I've never used their displays
Yeah.
before.
So the
And the only
displays
other
do
ones I've
have a
used have
battery.
never had batteries inside of them. It's always been. I have
And you
one. I
can
do
get
take one with
like
me when I travel.
4 or 5 hours of runtime directly off of that. But
Nice.
it's
Okay.
not it's not that. You need to let me finish this scenario here.
Por favor.
Is when was the last time you picked up a 15-inch monitor just to kind of casually kick back and do something from your phone. So as soon as you use it for anything work-ish or anything that sort of demands a larger display to use,
Hmm.
you pop open this kickstand and you prop it up. And so now it's sitting, well, that's not a couch use. You're not using it on the couch like
You're using it on a
this.
table now, or a coffee table or
Seriously.
something like that. Yeah, yeah.
So
No,
you're already back in a situation where you'd probably still be close to your phone. Like I've got a dining room table and I've
Mhm.
got a couch and I
Yeah,
can
yeah.
put my phone on the dining room table and go sit on my couch. But if I really want to use this, I open the kickstand and where do I set it down? On my big squishy ottoman? No, I go back to my dining room table and I put it down on the dining room table. So
I'm with you. I'm
the
with you. I'm
practical use of it is, it to me is, it's fun, and I worry that people will jump on something because they think wireless is going to be cool and it's going to be
yeah.
novel for a minute, and then the majority of its use is going to be the same as using a less expensive non-wireless version. So that's just where I'm anxious about how do I finish up this video and how do I finish up this review, is
I'm
because
with you.
I don't want to yuck someone's yum, but the reality of this to me seems like once the novelty wears off and you're kind of over this like base station
You're
transmitter
using the same
thing,
thing that was released prior. Yeah, they
you're
probably
using the
have a
same thing.
version of
And,
it.
and
Exactly.
that's why I wasn't as critical with the Next Dock, because the Next Dock 360 is $300. The Next Dock 360 wireless is $350. For the few times you might use wireless, $50 isn't that big a deal, right?
Yep.
Even if you
No, no.
never use the wireless, it was just nice to have as kind of a peace of mind. Maybe someday it would come in handy, and it never did. You only spent $50, and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
still had a great laptop dock that was still useful in a variety of other situations. This is like really one angst. How do I position this?
It's the
Who is this
creative
the
part.
right
It's the
fit
great. Yeah.
for?
How do you present it? How do you allow
I,
the product
I'm
to
struggling a little bit with, because every time someone comes up with a great like, yeah, but it's because of this, and you're like, true, but not for this kind of screen. Or yes, but how do you really use your phone?
No, no, I'm with you. I'll have to yeah, I know. It's one of those going to be very specific, very unique.
Yeah,
Where I feel like still the standard 15 with battery probably works just as well. But if I guess maybe they just make the option available for that 1% or maybe a small number of people that do need some
right.
kind of a solution that includes wireless. But definitely let us, we'll keep an eye on it. We'll
Yeah,
see. We'll get
stay
an update from
tuned.
you
There will be a video out on that probably after part 2 of my 1-inch camera
in
sensor
2023,
series.
hopefully in the next few weeks. Yes.
So sometime next year,
Sometimes,
I'll get
sometimes,
on
but we
that.
want to keep people on the on the edge of their seat for something, right? But with that being said, I do want to say that was kind of like a perfect transition. I think we're at that mark somewhat.
Yeah, I
Um,
gotta bounce.
we
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 gotta do
Juan needs
this.
to get out. There's some really cool things that he needs to take care of with the fam. So I do want to say thank you very much for everybody for hanging out with us. It sounds like I'm trying to end it at a very weird ending, but no. First and foremost, thank you, Aditya. Ramadan Mubarak to everybody that celebrates it, and thank you for the best wishes there. It is day 2. It's much easier than day 1. I'll say that much. But I want to say thank you very much to everybody for hanging out with us on this beautiful day. Hope you're having a great Friday evening or day, depending where you are, and a great weekend. Juan will be back Monday with the SGGQA as usual, and hopefully we'll see you guys next week for another episode of the best of our week on Thursday, back on our normal time. Take care,
Yo.
everybody.